Hey, what's up, you guys, and welcome back to Model Behavior. It's Macy. I am really excited to be recording this episode today, but I'm a little bit nervous. I actually recorded this episode right before this, and I was like, girl, I just need to get to the brass tacks of this episode. So I am going to try to keep it a little bit more concise. I know, crazy for me. You guys know I love to talk, but last week, I talked about how I was hosting a meetup, a girls' meetup in Denver last weekend, and it went so well. Okay, I had like 10 or 15 girls show up. I met some really, really cool girls, which is like the point of all of this. And we all just had a really good time. So we are already making plans to do something else because I don't know. And I've talked about this before, but it just is like cool how many girls in Denver are just looking for friendship and looking for connection, and how just like honest and vulnerable and candid they are about it. What else? Nothing too crazy. I went to the Denver Botanic Gardens for the first time. That was super fun. I did not like that they didn't have as many informational signs. I've been to the Botanic Gardens in Washington, D.C., which I know is like obviously going to be way better. But what I liked about those Botanic Gardens is that they had a lot more informational signs. And I've also randomly been to the Santa Barbara Botanical Gardens. I really like knowing like where the plants are found regionally. Give me just like one fun fact. Like, is it poisonous or not? Like, need to know this stuff. What kind of stuff eats this plant? But the Denver ones are definitely just a garden. Like, if you're lucky, it'll have a sign that says what plant it is. But if you're lucky, it'll have the common name. Most of the time, it was just a scientific name, which for me, I'm like, okay, like I know what an astragalus is, but like most people, I feel like wouldn't know that unless they do. I don't know. I'm not very good with domestic plants. I'm more of a native plant girly. But anyways, that was really fun. And then this weekend, oh, this weekend's going to be so fun. It's Memorial Day weekend, so it's a little bit cooler here these days. So I have not gotten my pool days in, unfortunately. But I'm going to a hockey game with Allison on Friday. And my friend Megan, she's a sports journalist, and she normally covers the Avalanche, but since the Avs are out of the playoffs, she's been coming up to Fort Collins and doing some coverage on the Eagles, which is their AHL affiliate, which I've talked about on here. Freaking love the Eagles, just down the road. And so she's going to be at the game doing coverage, and she's going to come say hi. I'm so excited. It's going to be such a fun time. And yeah, I saw Megan. She came to the meetup on Saturday, and it was my first time seeing her in a while, and it was just like so good to catch up with her. And yeah, honestly, just a great weekend and another great weekend coming up. I'm also going up to Estes Park to see Kate, and her twin Lucy is visiting. So I'm going to get to meet Lucy. We're all going to go golfing, and then we're going to go out in Estes Park, and I'm so excited. Kate, okay. Something that I was really stalling talking about, which is the whole point. Okay, this is like the main thing that this episode is going to be about, okay? I was really stalling diving into it because I am nervous to put myself out there like this. This is a very vulnerable episode, and you might be thinking, Macy, wasn't your breakup episode kind of vulnerable? Yes, it was, but at the same time, it wasn't, because I knew that the feelings I was having when I was talking about it in that episode are just like very universally shared in breakups. So I knew people would like agree with me. Whereas this episode might be a little bit more controversial. I think that when you're dating, everything is so subjective, and there's so many things that come into like the way that you perceive dating or the way you feel about dates and things like that. So I wanted to start off by saying what I'm talking about today by no means describes all men as a whole. First of all, I think that's really important. And it definitely, if you don't relate to this, if you're listening to this and you're like, no, that's not important to me at all, like that's great, okay? And that's why we have so many different people in the world and so many beautiful relationships that are all different, is because we all value different things, and that's awesome. But I was talking to the girls about this on Saturday, and they were like, you have to talk about this. And this is not something I tell a lot of people about, because I fully acknowledge that what I did was kind of crazy. I told Joan, my therapist, about this a while ago, and her eyes got so wide. She was like, are you serious? She didn't say that, but she was like doing her best to try to mask her judgment and shock, okay? And this isn't that bad, okay? It's not like I like committed a crime, but I'm a research scientist, okay? And so I collected data in what one might consider the ultimate length and width report. So in 2024, I collected a series of data points on every single date that I went on. And before you get your mind out of the gutter, I know we're calling this the LinkedIn With Report, but I want to say that this is a very PG episode. I will not be discussing eggplants in this episode. I do want to do another like deep dive LinkedIn With Report like I did before, but it was highly controversial, girl. I got a lot of comments from a lot of people about like, and I'm like, okay, I can't get into that right now, but I'm just like, I felt really passionate about like, okay, so guys are allowed to send this stuff to me, but I'm not allowed to talk about it. So I'm shamed for talking about it, but they're not shamed for doing it. I mean, they probably are shamed. I'm just the one that's talking about it publicly. So I know it's not totally black and white, but I am calling this the ultimate LinkedIn With Report because I think that ultimately what I want is to find a guy that I connect with really well. And so in 2024, I started this spreadsheet. Like I was going into 2024, like I am going to collect data on every single date that I went on this year. And the reason for that was that I had been dating some guys that were like maybe not the best for me, but I didn't know. I was naive, obviously. And so I was like, why don't they like me? Why didn't this work out? And I was really struggling with that. So in my mind, I'm so left-brained. I'm like, if I could just put numbers to this and understand my behavior better and try to understand like my own biases and things like that, then maybe I could make a meaningful relationship in 2024. Like I was fully okay, and I wasn't being weird about it, okay? I promise I wasn't like, I'm going to find a man. Like, don't worry, I'm not weird like that. I'm like, I'm very chill. The fact that I have to say that out loud, you're probably like, she is not chill. Narrator says she was never chill a day in her life, which is also probably true. But I do want to talk about what I found because I think that it brings up some really important conversation points. So first off, I'm going to pull my spreadsheet up here and I want to tell you the data that I collected. And also, one more disclaimer, I will not be disclosing occupations, definitely not names. I will not be disclosing any information that would give any indication of who these men are because most of them were very, very kind. And even the ones that were like maybe not the best, I don't wish any ill will on them. Just like all the guys in this that I talk about on this show, like I never wish any ill will on any of these men. And I never ever want to like read someone to filth to the point where they're easily identifiable. So anyways, with that being said, I collected obviously their name. I had their occupation, their age, the date of the date, what number of date it was, the type of date, the location of the date, and then my date's height. And then I also have height in inches because I wanted to average it out. Then I have, did we kiss? Yes or no? Rate of kiss out of 5. How I felt after the date out of 5. And then I also have their hair color and their eye color. And then the rest of these metrics I have on a scale of 1 to 5, except for attraction. I collected my overall attraction score and that was out of 10. And that's because I think attraction would kind of encapsulate maybe some of the factors that I didn't consider overall, because there's a lot of intrinsic things, a lot of unspoken social cues that we can pick up on that maybe account for that attraction. So when I was collecting these intrinsic metrics, I was really thinking about things that guys I had liked in the past had that I really admired or enjoyed about them that made me attracted to them, especially initially. So I scored them on their etiquette or their manners. I have their wit, personality, overall conversation of the date, humor, and banter. So those were things that I found important in initial phases of dating, okay? And this is all very initial phase of dating data. Obviously, as you date someone more, there's a lot more that you're like, okay, do we have shared values? Do we have similar goals in life? Like, we're not doing that, okay? Because in 2023, I didn't do this as I was going on dates, but I did look back on 2023 and write down how many dates I had been on, which ones had been successful, all of that. And that was like my little pilot study for this big study that I did in 2024. I know it's weird, okay? But if you're like, girl, this is so weird that you're doing this, you must not know me very well, okay? Because to my friends that I am close with, they're like, yes, she would do this. And it was fun, okay? Just let a girl have fun. So with my 2023 dates, I obviously, and this is statistically very common, you go on so many first dates, very few second dates, and then even fewer third dates. Like the guys people just filter themselves out. So I also collected out of 5 interest in me. So like asking questions on the date. Like, did the guy show interest in me? Because that's important. And then I added up all of those scores to see which dates scored the highest. And then I have, would I see him again? Yes or no? And then who ended it, me or him? And then I have notes. And the notes section was actually really important when I was doing the overall analysis of this. I actually did a little language learning model to figure out what patterns existed. And then I also put all of these comments into a little word cloud so that I could see the terms that I used the most often. So now that you know all of the metrics I collected, I'm going to go over my analysis. So like I said, I did a language learning model on the comments, like the notes, because I think the notes were actually like the most important part. And then I just did some like basic statistics on the rest of the metrics that I collected. So we're going to get into what I found. Okay. Number 1, I found that attraction score does not equal the stats on paper. So for example, I had one guy who scored a 26 out of 50, which was one of the lowest total scores, despite the fact that he was rated super high in manners and super high in personality. And there was another guy, meanwhile, who was shorter than most, but scored a perfect 10 for attraction across all 6 dates that we went on. I know, 6 dates, that's a lot. Anyways, I don't want to talk about it. So basically what's showing here is that, first of all, height is not as important of a factor for me as you would think, which I've always said that because I'm like, there will be no short king slander around here because I've been known to date a short king or two. But some of the stats from that back up that point is that out of the 17 men, I never said this. They're not 17 men. I went on 17 dates with 12 different guys in 2024, and that was up from 2023 where I went on 15 dates with 11 different guys. So you might be like, oh, that's so many guys. It's really not. If you consider that there's 52 weeks out of a year, I'm only going on like a smattering of dates, okay? And I just want to make that clear that I am going on dates with guys that I think are quality guys. I'm not just like going on a date with whoever like asks me. So I have a typo here, but out of the 17 dates that I went on, only 3 scored a 10 in attraction, and all 3 were from the same guy. That again didn't match a lot of the other metrics that I collected. Meanwhile, there was another guy that scored high 4s and 5s in all social categories. So not the attraction category, but all of the wit, banter, interest in me, that kind of thing. But still overall got a no from me due to the lack of the physical spark, which is important. And attraction accounts for the physical spark as well. I didn't want to make my study about physical attraction, especially since I was already collecting demographic data on like their hair color, eye color, height, all of that stuff. I just didn't want to make it about that because I know myself and it takes a lot more than just physical attraction for me to be attracted to you. Honestly, like your intelligence and your mind and the way that we connect and the way that you think is the most important factor that I consider. So the insight on that is that even when someone scored well on my spreadsheet, it didn't automatically translate into romantic or physical attraction. Shocker. You guys might be like, duh. Okay. Second dates don't always build chemistry. That was my second point. So for example, I had 2 guys that I went on 2 dates each with, and both really seemed promising to me. I was looking at my notes from the first date, but then they ended in a no. And usually it was due to a drop off in emotional connection or chemistry overall. So here's some interesting statistics. Out of the 6 men that I saw more than once in 2024, 50% of those relationships ended in a no. And I use the term relationship very loosely. It's just guys that I went on more than one date with. So only one guy maintained consistent or increasing attraction across all of the dates that we had gone on. So what that shows is that time alone does not deepen feelings. And sometimes it just gives me more evidence that the spark isn't there. And that's what dating is, right? Like literally that sentence is just straight up what dating is, okay? Number 3, personality and conversation for me beat height and occupation. So if you're a guy that's listening to this and you're like, girls only want tall guys that make a lot of money. Not true. And I have data to support that. So for example, the average height of my top 5 scorers of last year, They were all 5'11", so that was average. And not the tallest in my data set, but they had the highest combined scores in personality, conversation, and overall attraction. So 5 of my top 6 overall scorers were under 6'1", despite 9 men being taller than 6'1". Okay. And the 3 men with 10 out of 10 attraction ratings were 5'9" or shorter. So that totally breaks the tall equals hot myth, okay? And I just want to emphasize that if you are a shorter man or even average height man, it is not over for you. And I literally have data to support that. Obviously, there's personal preference and stuff, but like I come from a very tall family. Like I'm the shortest one in my family. My sister's taller than me. Both my parents are, obviously. I have 2 very tall brothers. And so I kind of always liked taller guys. I was like, I am more attracted to taller guys. But what the data shows here is that that's not a deal breaker for me. And really what comes down to is personality, conversation, and attraction. Okay? And that's important. So for me, connection and vibe definitely trumped superficial traits like height and job prestige in my real life experiences. Okay. My 4th takeaway from my study is that intelligence and manners were core predictors for me. So for example, I had a guy I went on a date with that scored horrible in etiquette, wit, personality, and interest in me. And he got one of the lowest overall scores. In contrast, there was a guy that had all 5s in etiquette, personality, and interest in me, and obviously he scored higher. So 100% of men with an etiquette score, a manners score of 4 or higher were people that I wanted to see again. Guys, if you're listening to this, open the door for her, give her the booth side. If you are walking on the street or walking on a sidewalk, walk on the outside closest to the street. These are just basic manners things, okay? If you do those simple things, based on me, sample size of 1, you have a 100% chance of the girl wanting to see you again. The girl, me. And that is very telling, okay? Have some good manners, guys. The lowest scoring dates overall also had the lowest interest in me scores and manners ratings, okay? So for me, bad manners, Also, part of the manners thing is that if you are the one that asked the girl out, you need to pay. I think that is just such a no-brainer, but it's not, as I found out. So the insight into that point is that no matter how attractive or charming someone was, a lack of social grace or effort kills the vibe for me so fast. Okay. I only have 5 points here, but there's so many takeaways that you can have from the data. So my last takeaway from this is that the emotional roller coaster for me was real, even with the data. So I really set out to try to put numbers to my feelings of why I liked certain guys and not other guys. And obviously it's an uphill battle with that, but I just wanted to try, okay? And turns out you can't judge attraction or success of a relationship by numbers alone. So for example, I gave one guy a perfect score in every category on all the dates that we went on, but it still ended with heartbreak. And with another guy, I had a very, very high attraction score with him, but I felt totally misled. I just was reading the situation wrong. So 6 out of my 17 dates ended with me feeling confused, disappointed, or misreading the situation. That's over 35% of the dates that I went on. I was so confused. I was like, wait, I thought we were in love though. Girl. Yep. So 35% of dates ended with me being confused. That's so cool. I love being confused. Ugh. Also, an attraction score of 10 did not guarantee a positive outcome. 2/3 of the dates with attraction scores of 10 ended in heartbreak or ambiguity. So what that says is just because I like you doesn't mean you like me. Even if I thought that you liked me, I could be wrong. So feelings don't always follow the logic, even with data. My brain can track the numbers, but my heart plays by its own rules. So those were my 5 takeaways from my ultimate length and width report from 2024. And I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about why we might be attracted to some guys rather than others. And obviously, I have so much anecdotal evidence both from my own experiences, but also from my friends' experiences. And this is something that I was really trying to unpack in therapy this year. And I felt like I've made so much progress in that category of just like understanding myself, being a little bit kinder to myself, but also just being aware of the patterns that I have. And I really started thinking about this obviously with myself, but then I recognized it in like the female population, not as a whole, but a lot of women that are single in this day and age. Because of that TikTok that I had posted about my brother that went like semi-viral. Part of the reason why it went semi-viral is because there were a lot of hate comments, which is really interesting. But what I saw from those hate comments of people kind of like poking at, saying mean things about my brother or saying mean things about me is not like, and I didn't take offense to them. Like what I saw from that is that there are just so many women that have been deeply, deeply hurt by someone. It affects the way that they see the world now. And to the point where they can see, 5 or 6 pictures of a guy that they don't know with little to no context and get really, really angry. And so I was talking about this in therapy after this happened. And I was like, I do not want to become that girl that is 30 and single and bitter and thinks that all guys are liars, all guys will lead you astray. First of all, that is not being a good researcher, because there is nothing in science that we can say with 100% absolute certainty. You can never say something with 100% certainty because that's not being a good scientist. Nothing that you can collect can describe a population as a whole. And so obviously I know this about science. So I was like, why am I really kind of subconsciously walking through my dating life assuming that this is the case? Because after I did this study, I was very frustrated because I was like, there are so many intangibles. Like, I don't understand why I was so attracted to some of these guys that just hurt me so deeply or lied to me so much. And I don't know how to prevent it, because obviously when you get hurt really badly in dating, you're like, what can I do to prevent it? And your body's, instinctual knee-jerk reaction is to avoid that stimulus again. And so early on, we're making assumptions about guys that we really don't know that much about. And so last week, I'm very sad, was my last session with my therapist, Joan, because she's retiring. And so I've been seeing her for about a year and a half, like twice a month for about a year and a half. And I'm very, very blessed that I have access to that resource with my job and my insurance. And I just want to acknowledge, like, not everybody has that. And there were definitely times in my life where I could not afford, groceries that month, much less therapy. So I feel like by sharing some of the things that I have learned throughout this process, is particularly in the last year and a half or so, hopefully they can help you. But Joan is retiring, so I had asked her this last week what I need to work on when I establish like a relationship with a new therapist. Because I just told her, I was like, the thought of having to like retell all of my lore to someone new is exhausting to me. So we made a list of things that were really important that I needed to work on. And particularly something that I had talked about was just kind of navigating these dating relationships. And Joan had said at one point, she said, it's interesting how you can form all of these really deep connections with women in friendship, but you seem deeply mistrusting of men. And I know that I'm not alone in that. I think that we've all at this point been deeply hurt by a guy, and that's really affected the way that we go about our lives or interact with other guys, and it affects our outlook on dating and relationships and marriage and kids. And one thing that you have probably heard about, but I had heard about but didn't really understand the full extent of it, is attachment theory. So basically this theory, it's a psychological theory that the way that you relate to both men and women all stems back to the relationship that you had with your mom and dad as a child, or your primary caretakers, whoever that was, whether it was like a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or just a guardian. It all stems back to this. In child development, the amount of neural connections that are established between the ages of 0 to 5 are immense. The amount of learning that a baby does between the ages, a toddler, I guess, between the ages of 0 to 5 is insane. And during that time, we are building skills to interact with the world around us. And the role that a primary caretaker plays in that establishment of our view of the world is immeasurably important. So if you grew up with a very close relationship with your mom, and when you were young, that meant that you could depend on her unconditionally. Her love was not conditional when you were young. You knew that even if you were really bad, she would always be there for you. Yes, you guys maybe might get into some disagreements, but she was a consistent presence. She did what she said she was going to do. She followed through. All of that stuff. If you have a good relationship with your mom, you're very likely to have a really good relationship with women in your life, establishing female friendships, things like that, because you had a secure attachment to your female caretaker. If you had a insecure attachment to your female caretaker, meaning there wasn't a consistent presence, there was not either no love shown or, transactional love, or you couldn't count on them for emotional support or physical support, then you might grow up finding it difficult to connect with women, might be mistrusting of women. And the same goes for a male caretaker. If you had either an absence of either one of these caretakers, but more commonly, if you had an absence of a male primary caretaker, that affects you in different ways in the way that you relate to men in your life. If you didn't have a secure attachment to a male caretaker, then you are more likely to carry on in your life with feelings of mistrust towards males in your life. And so my parents divorced when I was 9 years old. And it was a very, very rocky divorce. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And obviously my parents were just doing the best they could, and I acknowledge that. But it was not handled very well. And it resulted in all of us siblings kind of developing in different ways. And it is interesting how all four of us had more or less the same experiences growing up, and how we have developed into different people as a direct result of those experiences, because we all were on different sides of it. So for me, some of what happened when I was a child really resulted in my, view of dating and of men, and which men can be trusted and which can't. And so one of the things that Joan was talking to me about last week was you tend to take a few details about someone and make assumptions as a whole about them. And again, that's me being a bad researcher. I don't have enough data points to make an assumption. So she said that I, need to kind of just not make any big assumptions until we have the full picture. And when we talk about dating in general, that kind of goes with the old adage of let someone show you who they are. And for me, it went either way. Either a guy would do a few things, like he would open a few doors for me, or like get a haircut before our first date, and I would be like, wow, this guy's the best. I'm obsessed with him. Or like he would do a couple things that it would be like, oh, that's kind of icky. I think I have the ick. And like we could do a whole different episode on the ick, girl. I could get really into it, and then I would just run with it and make that my assumption. And that is like a protective mechanism to like protect yourself. I don't have that super secure attachment, which I again want to say that I'm very close with my dad now. And I think both of my parents are very great, amazing people, but I did not have the most secure attachment to him growing up by any means. And it really resulted in me being very achievement oriented. Okay. So I always was like, okay, the one thing that I can control is excelling in everything. I was that overachiever. And so I was constantly like captain of my sports team on varsity. I was all-state, all Northwestern band. I played multiple instruments. I was in so many different clubs. I got all A's. I was a valedictorian of my high school. And some of you might be like rolling your eyes like you're one of those people, but it was a direct result of what I had going on at home. Okay, I had to leave and come back for a second because I was getting emotional, but I think overall, when you're growing up in a little bit of an unstable home environment, one of the common personality archetypes that can arise from that is like the child that is the overachiever, that thinks that like if they can just be the best at everything, that they can somehow earn more attention or more affection from their primary caregivers. And that is very common. And like I said, my siblings, it's really interesting to see how all of us have kind of developed into different people as a result of our home environment growing up. But for me, that was definitely how it manifested. And so that also has really, really manifested in my dating relationships. And I think a lot of you will probably be able to relate to this, where if you're the kind of person that works very hard in your life for what you have, like you work really hard in your career, you're very proud of how far you've come, but you're always striving for the next thing. Sometimes we can accidentally let that spill over into our dating life, where we think, okay, nothing good worth having is easy. like we have to work for love. We have to work for someone's affection. And I saw that on display in my ultimate length and width report of 2024. And that the guys that I felt I was the most attracted to, and I felt the guys that were the most worthwhile, were the ones that I had to work harder to make things work with. And saying that out loud just sounds so silly how I'm saying it, but it's true. Like, it's on paper, you can see it, and it's very evident, just with what I know now about my attachment style and the way that I go about establishing either friendships or relationships. It's just very on display, and I think it's very hard to tell someone who's been an overachiever their entire life. You know, people show you who they are. You don't have to work so hard or try so hard for this. And if you do try so hard, it's probably not going to work out, especially in the early phases. In early stages of dating, you have to let people show you who they are. And that goes back to what Joan told me about, like, you make assumptions based on just a few data points. Like, rather than making those assumptions, you have to let people show you who they are. And part of that is, like, you can't decide whether or not someone is worthy of your trust without them showing that they're worthy of your trust, either one way or another. Maybe they're unworthy of your trust. And so you have to give them a chance to show you that. And that is what scares me. Like, I feel so uncomfy whenever I say that. Like, think about that. Like, okay, part of dating is you have to give someone a chance to either earn or not earn your trust. And they have to show you that. And I really talked about that last week with my friendship episode. I was like, okay, like, girls can be different levels of friends. And until they prove you otherwise, you kind of have to let that friendship be. Like, maybe they could work their way up to a level 5 friend, but then they do something that breaks your trust. And you have to decide, okay, is this something that we can work through? Or is this something that maybe downgrades them to a level 2 friend? And it was so easy. It's so easy for me to do that with female friends. And obviously, I told Joan this too. I was like, the reason why I take this so seriously is because you can have as many friends as you want, but you can only have one boyfriend. And she kind of laughed about that, which is so funny. But she's a marriage therapist mostly. And she was like, she told me to put this in my notes too. She was like, you are fiercely monogamous. And I was like, yeah, I am fiercely monogamous. But because of that, I take this stuff very seriously, and I tend to be more guarded. And I think a lot of girls can relate. And so I will really encourage you in dating, considering that there really is nothing you can't put numbers to whether or not a relationship is going to work out. You really cannot, as evidenced by my study last year. I really encourage you to let someone show you who they are by not making assumptions based on the first few data points, and, you know, let them give them an opportunity to show you whether or not they are worthy of your trust. And it can feel uncomfortable. It can feel really uncomfortable to do that. But I think that is really, really important. And that also helps us eliminate, because you guys might have been thinking about this the entire time, it helps us eliminate what's called limerence, which is basically a fancy psychology word to describe having a fatty crush on someone. Because people always say a crush is just a lack of information. And that is true to an extent. Limerence is a crush due to lack of information, where you decide ahead of time, or you decide, like, you know, we would look so good together, and like, this guy opened the door for me twice, like, we're getting married. And then it kind of makes you ignore some of the red flags that are happening. So, and I'm the worst about this, okay? I am the world's biggest daydreamer. I am always daydreaming, and it doesn't matter what it's about. And in dating, it can be really bad. Sometimes if I have a fatty crush, I can just daydream, and then it makes me ignore some of the red flags or overlook them. And I know I'm not alone in this. But by looking at the person as a whole and just looking at it as like, okay, I am letting them show me who they are, and showing me if they're worthy of my trust, I think you can kind of eliminate the limerence thing. I know. And here's the thing. I love having a fatty crush. Having a crush is the best thing in the world. The world is brighter when I have a crush. Everything, the sun is brighter, the birds are chirping more, the grass is greener. But unfortunately, it is a little bit delulu. And so that is something that I am working on. In any case, the main takeaway from the ultimate length and width report of 2024 is that you cannot put a number to attraction or spark, and you cannot put a number to figure out if a relationship will be sustained or is worthwhile. And obviously, that seems like a given, but I just really wanted to test it out for me personally and see if that was the case. And it was, frustratingly enough. Not everything in the world can be a science experiment, Maisie. And based on that, I really encourage you to kind of look at yourself and see, okay, what's my attachment style? Like, what was my attachment to my primary caregivers growing up like? And if you're a guy, I really encourage you to do this too, because I think that especially in these days when the dynamics of a successful marriage are really changing to be obviously more of a partnership, emotional reflection is really important on both sides of the relationship. And sometimes I feel like a really common thing, especially if you're a high achieving male, a lot of times if you did have a father figure in your life, they were very hard on you and they could be very, even sometimes gruff or sometimes mean. And it can be not the closest relationship between guys and their fathers. Think about how that has affected you when it comes to your dating relationships or your friendships or just any relationships in life, because that is a very common thing. And obviously I can only speak from a female perspective because I can't speak for, my brothers or any other guys in my life, but that's something that I've observed with high achieving guys. They tend to have sometimes strained relationships with their fathers because their fathers did push them so hard, sometimes too much. And I really think that, there's so many things that come into play that contribute to who we are as a person today. But it's also really important to note that you can learn, and part of this process is trying to learn and trying to kind of break those subconscious habits that we have so that we can build more meaningful relationships in our lives and not continue, generational trauma. This is getting really deep, sorry, but I've just been thinking about this a lot. And so yeah, just really look and see how your relationship with your primary caregivers, how it was, and how that might have spilled over into your dating life in particular. Again, going back to that TikTok that I posted of my brother, there was just so much hurt in the comments that I could see that so many girls had just been so deeply, deeply hurt. And I feel like there's so many guys that have been hurt in the past and just choose to make it everyone's problem. And girls can do that too, okay? I'm not saying it's exclusive to men. But after seeing all of that and then seeing seeing the results of my experiment, I'm just like, if I was hurt by someone, whether that was in childhood by a caregiver or by a past relationship, I am very committed to not making it everyone's problem. And the way that I am trying to do that is trying to understand my patterns, just kind of reflect on that emotionally and not let past hurts and past wounds, I don't want to go through life with a chip on my shoulder, right? I want to be an open person, and I'm really actively trying to take more steps to be that. So I encourage you to do the same. And I know that this I wish that I could come to you with this data and be like, if he scores high in all of these categories, or if he scores high in here, but not here, you guys are for sure going to work out. That's just not what I found. And it's a lot more complicated than that. And that's kind of the beauty of humans. We're unpredictable, and the way that we interact with the world, it is so not empirical. It is so frustrating to me, but I think it's also kind of beautiful. Life is so beautiful. Anyways, so yeah, thanks for listening to me today, and I hope that you guys have a really good rest of your week. I hope you guys have a great Memorial Day weekend. I hope you get up to something fun. And my challenge to you for the upcoming weeks is to let people in a little bit more and give them a chance to show you who they are, and not let past hurts or, past childhood traumas influence the way that you view relationships or people. And remember that love does not have to be earned, okay? That is part of it. And you should not have to strive or work super hard to earn someone's love and affection. And just let things come to you. Let good things come to you. I am really looking forward to talking to you guys in the next episode. Bye.